In this first video, we're going to actually look at how to get started with the MonoDevelop tools, which are the standard tools that we use in our Introduction to Computer Science class. I won't go into all of the details about why we chose MonoDevelop, but the primary reason we chose it is that it is a completely open source project and it allows non-Windows users to develop in this excellent programming language called C# that comes from Microsoft. So we think you're going to like it. Like much open source software, there are often bugs that appear now and then, and I think you'll find that with each release of MonoDevelop, it seems to be getting better and better as a project. So this is the first course we've used where version 3 is available to us, and both Dr. Harrington and I are generally pleased with this release, and we decided to actually start making use of it in our course. So anyway, let's take a quick look at the MonoDevelop webpage, which is basically where you'll go to get MonoDevelop. I just wanted to take you through how this page is typically organized, and then we'll immediately dive in and start working on MonoDevelop itself. So if you take a look here, you'll see that the Download Now button is conspicuously visible on the website, and we're going to go there. In general, we ask that you stick with the MonoDevelop stable release during this class because the beta releases from time to time can contain functionality that can be confusing to students in particular, and it even sometimes confuses us, to say the least. So basically everything we're doing until we update this video is focused on MonoDevelop 3.0. The 0.6 is a point release that usually means that some bugs and patches have been made to fix, have been made to address those bugs. So without further ado, the thing you'll want to notice here is that there's plenty of support for most of the operating systems that students are likely to be using. In our experience, most students are using Windows and Mac OS for their work, and we have a few students who use Ubuntu. So we've tested MonoDevelop on all of these platforms and find it to be quite excellent. So we're not going to cover the installation of MonoDevelop here because this is kind of a platform-specific thing. But if you're at all familiar with the process of self-extracting installers, the process is pretty simple on both Windows and Mac OS, and you'll find that the Ubuntu installation is fairly straightforward as well, as you can install the MonoDevelop package from the repository. Just keep in mind that the Ubuntu version that is officially distributed through Ubuntu is sometimes out of date, so you will probably find yourself spending a lot of time trying to get your environment up and running. So from this point forward, we would like to just suggest that your best experience is likely to happen on Windows or OS X, especially if you're a newbie to programming, or even if you are just in the early part of your programming career. So without further ado, let's actually try to launch MonoDevelop. And for the purpose of this lecture, I'm going to be focusing only on these items here that you see as bullet items on my little sticky note. And basically that would be to get MonoDevelop, launch MonoDevelop, create your first solution, and then compiling and running your first program. And it sounds like a lot, but I think you'll find that this is fairly straightforward, and it's remarkable how you can get up and running fairly easily and have a first program working. So let's go ahead and try to launch MonoDevelop here. And as you can see, I already had it running because it came up so quickly. But basically, this is the first screen that you will actually see when you launch the MonoDevelop tool. You can see here, I'm going to give you kind of a quick overview of some of the things you see here and which are important and which we can kind of hold off on for future discussions. The stuff I'm actually highlighting here is what we mainly need for this first lecture. Everything starts in MonoDevelop from something called a solution. This terminology of solutions actually comes from Microsoft and its famous Visual Studio environment. So the MonoDevelop people wanted to make sure that when people start working with MonoDevelop, that the concepts of solutions and projects are based on the familiar concepts from Visual Studio. We generally think this was a good decision. So I'm going to kind of get started right away. And then one thing I wanted to show you is that on the left-hand side here, you'll see that I have several projects that I have been working on. In fact, one of these is related to Comp 170's source code. We're going to also cover that in a future lecture. So anyway, let's go ahead and start our first solution here. And basically you select Start New Solution, and you will see that you are presented with a dialog to create your first project. I want to point out something here because I have been working on this system for some time. The location you see here may actually be different on your computer. For me, it's in users, GKT, work, intro, CS, C#, source. I actually had changed this location. Most of the time, what you see, and I'm going to actually type it here, will be projects. Okay, so this is what the default value will be. So if you see that, this is perfectly normal. So anyway, I'm going to cancel now, and I'm going to start new solution again, so that actually this will be created in my working folder. So basically it's very simple. We want to start here by creating what I would call an empty project. Okay, and so the empty project is usually a good choice if you are going to be creating a bunch of programs in the same project. We can also start with this thing called a console project. So either one of these is fine. It's just that the empty project literally doesn't have anything in it, and then you have to add a project to make your first program. So I'm going to call this empty project demo because I am actually giving you a demonstration. You see here that let me cancel for a minute. I'm going to actually stop here and I'll keep going and I'll edit the video later. Okay, let's actually back up for a second. I would prefer that we do actually create the console project, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this project hello. Okay, and the reason is that I am actually only planning on creating one program here at this time. So let's just go ahead and do that. Okay, and then we're going to say forward. Okay, now unfortunately, this next screen comes up which asks you whether you want GTK Sharp support, which is basically a way of building native GTK programs that run on Linux. I recommend that you just not pay any attention to this and press OK. Alright, so now the rather interesting thing that happens here is that when you select your first when you select this empty when you build this console project, you'll see that there's actually already what appears to be the source code for the Hello World program in there, and it's both a good and a bad thing. We'd actually rather that you learned how to type this program in yourself and do it, but it's already set up for you. What you might want to do, especially if you are kind of just wondering, is this for real? Just go ahead and maybe change this by putting the cursor in the window and then just editing the text to say hello George. Now, for those of you who are listening and find yourself being new to the concept of text editing, I'm not going to cover how to become a master of text editing here, but one thing that I wanted to tell you is that it works a lot like a word processor. Okay, so I hope that that explanation suffices for now. And if you are totally, oblivious to text editing, well, you're just going to have to kind of dive in and learn how to do it. And we might have another video on the functionality of the editor, but I'm going to kind of be explaining things as I go along, and I do apologize if I don't explain everything in detail at this stage. Okay, so basically we have, if you look here now, you'll notice that we have a number of things going on. And first of all, the file is named main.cs, and this is technically not the best way to organize a project. What you really should do is you should name the project after what the concept of your program is. This program is called Hello. Okay, so what I'd really like to do is I'd like to rename this, okay, to be Hello. Alright, so now I have hello.cs. Now let's take a look at the program that was actually, generated when we first, launched this project. You'll see here that, some choices have been made that are kind of nondescript choices. First of all, the namespace here. Now we're going to be teaching you about namespaces in the lecture notes, but the namespace that you see here is basically just named after the project. This is okay, but as we get into more serious things, we're going to find that we need to have a common namespace that might be associated with several different parts of our program. So I actually recommend that we leave this namespace as hello for now, because this is an introductory program, but we're going to find that we're going to want to use a different namespace later, in all likelihood. The next thing is you see that a class has been generated. This is because C# requires a class for every program that you create. We're not actually taking advantage of object-oriented programming that much in this example, but you might want to consider actually naming this class something like Hello Class. Again, it could have been left as is, but we're trying to also get you to understand that naming is important. Something like main class doesn't say anything, and even here we don't really need to have class as part of the name, but I think that it's okay for the purpose of this first program. We could also have called it Hello World. Let's do that. Okay, so there we go. And then we have the main method here. Again, you don't need to understand everything that's going on in this first program, because what the goal of this this particular lecture is to make sure that if you knew something about how to write a program, you would be able to type it in and then compile and run it. And what I want to get through in this lecture is how to do those two things. Edit the program at a very basic level, and then we're going to compile and we're going to run it. It's possible that you could do something that would cause an error. For example, if this semicolon is missing, all right, you will see that, well, you won't see it yet. Let's go ahead now and compile this program and see what happens. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say build, okay? And, you have several different choices here. And one of the things about computer science in general is that you'll find that sometimes the sheer number of choices that are before you can be completely bewildering. But if you actually just consider that we're not trying to take advantage of every feature in the MonoDevelop tool, you'll find that this set of choices is actually simpler than it looks. What I recommend that you do actually in most programming in this class is just to use the build all feature, because if you have a whole bunch of different programs in your solution, it'll only build the ones that need to be built anyway. And as a general rule, you do want to make sure that all of the programs in your project compile properly. So let's just do that. Okay. Oh, and look what happened here. Oh my, this is just unbelievable. Okay, we have an error message here. Yeah, unexpected symbol. And what does it say there? Oh my goodness, yes. And you see, if you hover over that, it actually gives you some additional details saying what the problem is. This is another thing that can be really frustrating when you're learning programming, is you get a message like this and you're like, what the heck? And, well, it turns out that the error message is actually on the wrong line. Do you see how it's on line number 10 here? And we know that the semicolon was just deleted because I deleted it. And I caused that error purposely, if you remember. So let's go ahead and do it, and we'll save. By the way, you basically should use File, Save. And there's usually a shortcut, Command S on Mac, Control S on Windows and Linux. Okay, so let's save that. All right, and then we're going to build again. And just like that, we've compiled our first program. One thing to notice, again, it will become more obvious as you do more, but if you take a look where my mouse is moving, you'll see that this is actually showing that the build was successful. Very important thing to understand at this stage is that build successful is kind of an elusive message of sorts, because everyone who's a programmer knows that build successful often means that your program really doesn't work, but it compiled successfully. So it just so happens that our program is extremely simple, so I'm pretty confident that it actually is going to run. But, you know, it could be that you are doing something like one of our homework assignments, and you will find that you are going to be doing a lot of building just to get your program to work, because you'll have to make changes to fix the bugs in your program and so on. Okay, so finally what we want to do here is to actually run this program, and I'm actually going to go ahead and do I'm going to actually try to run it now. Now again, when you go to the Run menu, you can see that there's again a bewildering assortment of choices here. So most of the choices you see on this menu are actually associated with something called debugging. We'll have a lecture on that as well in the future. But for now, what you want to do is you want to look at the Run With option. You will see that there are a number of options here that, again, may or may not make sense to you at this stage. But what you want to do is you want to say Run With Mono. Mono is the runtime system that is used to run C# programs. A lot of people refer to this as .NET, in case you are wondering. So basically we're going to do that. Now you will see that this brings up what's called a terminal window, or it's also affectionately known as the console. Now if you remember way back in the beginning when we created our project, we actually were creating what's called a console project. And what's meant by a console project is that it's a program that does most of its input and output on a terminal. I'll come back to that terminal concept in a minute, but basically what you're seeing here is what's called a terminal window. And you can see that on my computer it has a beautiful green font and black background. I actually set up my terminal to use those colors because back in the old days when I was a programmer, I used a lot of what are called ASCII terminals, and one of them was called the Zenith H19, which had exactly the same color scheme that you see here. Okay, so and let me see if I can pull that up on Wikipedia here. So you can see here that the Zenith H19 is a very famous computer terminal that was created by Zenith Data Systems, and it actually I'm sorry, I pulled up the wrong one here. I was trying to find that. Maybe it's actually here. Yeah. Well, anyway, you get the idea. All right. So, okay, where were we? So yeah, we've actually just run our program. Now you can see here that this program is running, and it basically printed "Hello George" there up on the screen, and then this "press any key to continue" is basically just a prompt that is automatically being generated by MonoDevelop to make sure that you are able to see the output so that it doesn't go away. Okay, because once you do hit any key to continue, it says process completed, right? And on Windows and Linux, actually, it may actually go away. So anyway, then we can get rid of this window by typing Command W on Mac, or you can just hit this little thing up here. I am not entirely sure why this is happening, but this is probably something wrong with my settings, so you can ignore that. Okay, so the program did work, and that pretty much concludes what I wanted to cover in this first lecture. I would say any questions, but you'll have to email me if you have any questions.